Shabbat Shalom. So as you may have heard mentioned, today I am 42 years old. Actually, just kidding, I'm 52. But I wanted to see if you were listening. All right? And the story is told of a man about my age who goes to the doctor. And after 2 visits and lab tests, the doctor says, you know, Manny, you're doing pretty well for your age. And Manny's like, what do you mean? Do you think I'll live to be 80? And the doctor says, well, do you drink scotch? Do you smoke cigars? I don't touch this stuff. Well, do you eat, fatty foods? Do you eat steak, chopped liver? No, that stuff's really unhealthy for you. Well, do you spend time in the sun? Do you play golf? Like, no, the sun, you could get cancer. How about gambling, driving fast, partying? No, none of those things. Doctor looks at Manny and says, well, then why do you want to live to be 80? The Torah portion, the Haftorah portion in particular that we read today, talks about the question in some ways of what we do and don't do as themes. So the Haftorah today introduces an important figure in our literature, our lore, our legend, Samson. I mentioned earlier his birth was announced with great omens of who this would be. He would grow up to be a hero who would redeem Israel. And he is known in our tradition as Shimshon HaGibor, Shimshon, Samson the Strong. And in fact, he has these tremendous feats of strength. He kills Philistines, 200 of them with the jawbone of an ass. He, in his death, brings down the pillars of the temple of the Philistines upon himself and them. His weakness, like every hero has to have a weakness. His weakness is his hair. And in the end, he dies with the Philistines. So he's called Shimshon HaGibor, Shimshon the brave, Shimshon the powerful. And yet, in some ways, Shimshon, Samson, is ironically the weakest of our biblical heroes. He is constantly falling prey to every temptation that is put before him, whether it is trying to marry a daughter of the enemy, whether it is being tempted into a game of riddles where he will end up losing, which is kind of like engaging in the comments on social media today. And so the rabbis actually said that he is a gibor. He is physically strong, but that you can actually define strength in more than one way, and that in fact, that the way that they define strength is actually restraint. So in Pirkei Avot, we learn Ezahu Gibor, who is the one who is strong, HaKovesh at Yitzro, that the greatest strength is actually the ability to restrain one's self. And when you get into Kabbalah, when you get into Jewish mysticism, you see this. There are 2 characteristics, 2 psychological human traits or true aspects of the divinity that are seen as in opposition to each other. You have chesed, which is overflowing power, and you have gvura, which is strength, which is actually a holding back of power. And so let me see if I can explain what this means, because mysticism, it's a little complicated. So chesed is the power of water, unrestrained force. If you've ever seen a flood, if you have ever seen images of a hurricane, if you've ever in the middle of the night realized my prostate is not once it was, you understand the power of water. Getting old. So chesed is overflowing power. Gvura is the ability to hold back that power. So when God created the waters on the 2nd day, when God separates the upper and lower waters, that is gvura. That is holding back that power of water. Right? The fact that the ocean doesn't overwhelm the land, that is gvura. That is strength. holding back the power of water. If you look at our biblical heroes, Abraham is the paradigm of chesed. Anything that God says, Abraham says yes. Anything that anyone asks, Abraham says yes. So, send Ishmael into the desert? Sure. Sacrifice Isaac up on an altar? Great. Go to a land you don't know? No worries. Even when it comes to his mercy, it is dispersed without discrimination. So I'm going to kill the people of Sodom. Wait, save those people over there, even though they are sinners. So when it comes time, though, to sacrifice Isaac, sure, God, whatever you want. That is chesed. That is putting out your energy wherever and whenever. Gvura is Isaac. So Abraham leaves the land of Israel. He goes to Egypt. He's traveling. He's going here. He's going there. Isaac is the only one of the patriarchs who never leaves the land of Israel. Isaac is the one who, when his son comes to him, says, Esav, I don't have the same blessing for you. I actually only have a limited number of blessings. And I already gave the good one to Isaac. You're going to get the number 2 blessing. Sorry, you're Avis amongst my kids. So when you think about chesed and gvura, there is the strength that is unconstrained, that is uncontrolled, and then there is the strength of restraint. And if you think about it in the metaphor of biology, so the ability that we are able to grow, that our cells are able to divide and multiply, that is in some sense chesed. But there is a word that doctors have for cells that grow without restraint, and that word is cancer. Gvura is the ability to limit one's growth, is the ability to grow within a form and shape that one is supposed to have. So here I am looking at being more than halfway to a century, and by the way, coming up on 20 years at B'nai Torah, which is far longer than anyone thought possible. And I will tell you that getting older is not easy, right? So you know you're old when you hear your favorite songs in the elevator. And you try to straight out the wrinkles in your socks, and then you realize you aren't wearing any. When all you want for your birthday is not to be reminded how old you are. When you wish that you looked like your driver's license photo. You take the hand of a little old lady crossing the street, and she says on the other side, "You're welcome." There comes a point, perhaps, when we might see life as limiting, but in fact, I think part of wisdom, and actually part of the greatest strength, is like Kenny Rogers used to say, knowing when to hold them and when to fold them, when to go all in and when to sit on the sidelines. So I recently set a goal for myself whenever I go on social media, which is whenever I see something that someone has written I want to respond, I think of the dumbest, most offensive, most incendiary thing I could possibly write, and then I don't put it in the comments. And automatically I have not said the dumbest thing I could possibly say. I'm already one step ahead. But the truth is, I think for each of us, the question of what we choose to do and what we choose not to do, sometimes the greatest strength is not the bravery to go out and to fight the heathens on the battlements. Sometimes the greatest strength is actually the strength to say, you know what, I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to get in on this one. I'm going to hold my fire for when it matters. You know, when I think about B'nai Torah as an organization, and we just installed a new board last night, and Jeremy's here. Welcome. Thanks for coming back. We didn't scare them all off. One of the hardest things to do as an organization is to actually turn down an opportunity. Someone says, we're going to donate money for you to do this, and you realize that actually we don't want to do that, so taking this money is not helpful. Or, you know, we have this opportunity, but that opportunity doesn't take us where we want to go. That is growth, but it's the wrong kind of growth. In the three-part blessing that we read this morning, Yevarecha Chanai v'yishmarecha, may God bless you and guard you. The blessing there of Yishmarecha, that may God guard you, is in fact the blessing of restraint. Is the blessing of saying, you know what, may God guide you not only what to do, right, but also when to say, sorry, this is not my stop. So, Samson lived a life of physical strength, but no restraint. And in fact, did not live to be particularly old, although he left a tremendous legacy. What I would argue is that it is perhaps easier to get older than it is to get wiser, but it is easier to get older if you are wiser. And so that perhaps as I approach this day, I suggest that maybe being older isn't about doing less, it's about doing the right things. Samson learned that lesson in the temple of the Philistines as he literally brought down the house. I think for each of us, in whatever stage of life we are at, whether we are young, whether we are in middle school and trying to figure out whether it is worth doing something that is going to get us in big trouble and get a big laugh, should we do it? The answer is yes. Your mom is really mad at me right now. It's gotten me where I am today. But knowing that the laugh has to be worth the trouble you're going to get into. And so, as we think about who we are, and God willing, all of us having another year to come back and celebrate next year, that we think about the power of gvura not as physical strength, but as the power, the ability of restraint, the ability to know when is the right time not to use our strength, and when is the right time to go ahead and do it. Shabbat Shalom.